Son mentioned a game he plays with Uncle. When Mom found out what it was, she called the police in tears. The kitchen was filled with the comforting aroma of simmering tomato sauce as Julie stood at the stove, stirring the bubbling pot. It was a typical Wednesday evening, the kind where the mundane tasks of daily life blended into a soothing routine. Julie hummed softly to herself, her mind already planning the next day's activities. The sound of the front door opening and closing, followed by the patter of small feet, announced Michael's return from his afternoon at Uncle Dave's. At 7 years old, Michael was a bundle of energy and enthusiasm, always eager to share his day's adventures.
Mom.
"I'm home," Michael's voice rang out, filled with the excitement only a child can muster after a fun-filled afternoon. Julie smiled, turning from the stove to greet her son. "Hey, sweetheart. Did you have a good time at Uncle Dave's?" Michael's face lit up, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Oh, Mom, it was the best. Uncle Dave and I played our secret game again. We have so much fun." Julie's hand froze mid-stir, her smile faltering for just a moment. "Secret game?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light and casual. "What kind of secret game?" Michael's grin widened, a mischievous glint in his eye. "It's our special game, Mom. Uncle Dave says it's just for us. We have so much fun, but I can't tell you about it. It's a secret." Julie felt a cold knot form in the pit of her stomach. Her mind raced, trying to process Michael's words. A secret game? With Uncle Dave? Why would they need to keep it a secret? Forcing a smile, Julie turned back to the stove, her movements now mechanical as her thoughts whirled. That's nice, honey. Why don't you go wash up for dinner? It'll be ready soon." As Michael bounded out of the kitchen, Julie gripped the counter, steadying herself. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising panic in her chest. "It's probably nothing," she told herself. "Kids have imagination. They love secrets and games." But a nagging voice in the back of her mind wouldn't be silenced. Why would Dave, her brother-in-law, insist on keeping a game secret from the rest of the family? What kind of game would require that level of secrecy? Julie's thoughts raced to dark places, scenarios she'd read about in news articles or seen on crime shows flashing through her mind. She shook her head, trying to dispel the horrifying images.
No, not Dave.
He was family. He loved Michael. He would never. But the seed of doubt had been planted. As Julie mechanically finished preparing dinner, her mind kept replaying Michael's words. The innocent joy in his voice contrasted sharply with the growing unease in her heart. By the time Mark, her husband, came home from work, Julie had managed to compose herself outwardly. But inside, a storm was brewing. As they sat down to dinner, she watched Michael chattering away about his day, looking for any signs of distress or discomfort. But he seemed perfectly normal, happy even. "So, Michael," Mark asked between bites, "what did you and Uncle Dave get up to today?" Julie tensed, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth as she waited for Michael's response. Michael's eyes lit up. "Oh, we played our special game. It's so much fun, Dad." Mark chuckled, ruffling Michael's hair. "That's great, buddy. I'm glad you had a good time." Julie watched the exchange, her unease growing. Mark didn't seem to notice anything amiss. Was she overreacting? Was her mind jumping to conclusions based on one innocent comment? As the evening wore on, Julie tried to push her concerns aside. She went through the motions of their nightly routine, helping Michael with his homework, overseeing bath time, tucking him into bed. But all the while, her mind kept circling back to those few words, secret game. Later, as she lay in bed next to Mark, sleep eluded her. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts a tumultuous whirlpool of worry and doubt. Should she talk to Mark about it? Would he think she was being paranoid? Julie turned on her side, watching Mark's peaceful, sleeping face. How could she explain the gnawing fear in her gut based on so little evidence? Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe it was just an innocent game, and she was letting her imagination run wild. But as she finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, Julie couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She made a silent vow to herself to pay closer attention, to watch for any signs that her worst fears might be justified. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test her instincts, her relationships, and her understanding of the fine line between protection and paranoia. The days following Michael's casual mention of the secret game were a blur of tension and uncertainty for Julie. She found herself hyper-aware of every interaction Michael had, every word he spoke, searching for clues or signs that something might be amiss. Michael, oblivious to his mother's growing concern, continued to chatter excitedly about his time with Uncle Dave. Each mention of their special game sent a fresh wave of anxiety through Julie, but try as she might, she couldn't get Michael to reveal any details. "Hey, sweetie," Julie would ask, trying to keep her voice casual. "What exactly do you and Uncle Dave do in this game of yours?" Michael's response was always the same, a big grin followed by, "It's a secret, Mom. I can't tell you." Sometimes he'd add, "Uncle Dave says it's just for us," which only served to heighten Julie's unease. Julie found herself analyzing every aspect of Michael's behavior. Was he more withdrawn? Did he seem anxious about spending time with Uncle Dave? But to her frustration, Michael seemed as happy and well-adjusted as ever. If anything, he was more excited than usual on days when he knew he'd be seeing his uncle. The rational part of Julie's mind tried to reassure her. If something was truly wrong, surely there would be signs. Michael was a sensitive child. He'd never been good at hiding his emotions. Wouldn't he show some distress if something inappropriate was happening? But the worried mother in her couldn't let it go. The secrecy bothered her more than anything. Why would Dave insist on keeping a game secret from the rest of the family? What possible innocent explanation could there be for that? Julie found herself lying awake at night, her mind conjuring worst-case scenarios. She'd read too many news stories, seen too many tearful interviews with parents who never suspected anything was wrong until it was too late. The thought that she might be missing something, that her child might be in danger right under her nose, was unbearable. During the day, Julie threw herself into research, scouring parenting websites and child psychology articles for information on signs of abuse or manipulation. She found herself scrutinizing every interaction Michael had with adults, even those she'd trusted implicitly before. The strain began to show in other areas of her life. She was distracted at work, her mind always half on Michael and the mysterious game. Her colleagues noticed her preoccupation, but Julie brushed off their concerns with vague excuses about not sleeping well. At home, her relationship with Mark began to feel the tension. Julie hadn't shared her concerns with him yet, unsure of how to broach the subject without sounding paranoid. But her distraction and anxiety were palpable, leading to short tempers and miscommunications. "Is everything okay, Jules?" Mark asked one evening, his brow furrowed with concern. "You seem, I don't know, on edge lately." Julie forced a smile, hating the deception but not ready to voice her fears. "I'm fine, just a bit stressed with work. It'll pass." As the days wore on, Julie found herself becoming increasingly frustrated with her inability to get answers. She considered confronting Dave directly but hesitated, afraid of damaging family relationships if her suspicions proved unfounded. She tried approaching the subject obliquely with Michael, asking about his time with Uncle Dave in general terms, hoping he might let something slip. But Michael, usually so open and talkative, became oddly evasive when pressed for details about the game. "Come on, Michael," Julie coaxed one afternoon. "You can tell me about your games with Uncle Dave. I won't spoil the secret, I promise." Michael shook his head stubbornly. "No, Mom. It's our special game. I can't tell anyone." The firmness in his voice, so unlike his usual eager-to-please demeanor, sent a chill down Julie's spine. Had someone coached him to keep quiet? Or was this simply a child's natural love of secrets and exclusive clubs? Julie found herself watching Michael like a hawk, looking for any changes in behavior that might indicate distress. She noted with growing unease that he seemed more withdrawn at times, especially after returning from Dave's house. But was this a sign of something sinister, or just a normal ebb and flow in a child's moods? The uncertainty was maddening. Julie felt like she was walking a tightrope, balancing her instinct to protect her child with the fear of overreacting and potentially damaging important family relationships. She knew she needed to do something to find answers, but every potential course of action seemed fraught with risk. As another sleepless night loomed, Julie made a decision. She couldn't go on like this, caught in a limbo of fear and doubt.
Tomorrow, she would talk to Mark.
Together, they would figure out how to approach the situation, how to ensure Michael's safety without jumping to conclusions. But as she lay in the darkness, listening to Mark's steady breathing beside her, Julie couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of a precipice. Whatever came next would change everything, for better or worse. And through it all, one question echoed in her mind. What was this secret game? And why did it have to be a secret at all? As days turned into weeks, Julie found herself caught in a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. Her initial alarm had settled into a constant, gnawing worry that colored every interaction with Michael. She watched him like a hawk, scrutinizing every change in mood, every offhand comment about Uncle Dave. It was during these hypervigilant observations that Julie began to notice subtle shifts in Michael's behavior. The changes were so gradual that she might have missed them if she hadn't been looking so intently. But now, they stood out like red flags, each one adding to the weight of her concerns. Michael, once an open book, eager to share every detail of his day, became more reticent. He still chattered about school and his friends, but whenever the topic of Uncle Dave came up, a noticeable change came over him. His animated gestures would slow, his eyes would dart away, and his voice would take on a forced casualness that set Julie's nerves on edge. "How was your time at Uncle Dave's today?" Julie would ask, striving for a neutral tone. Michael's response was always the same, a shrug, followed by a quiet, "It was fine." Gone were the excited recountings of their adventures, replaced by vague generalities and quick changes of subject. Julie couldn't shake the feeling that Michael was holding something back, that there was a weight on his small shoulders he couldn't or wouldn't share. The thought kept her up at night, her mind racing with possibilities, each one more horrifying than the last. One evening, as Julie was tucking Michael into bed, she decided to press a little harder. "Sweetheart," she began, sitting on the edge of his bed, "you know you can tell me anything, right? Anything at all, even if it's a secret." Michael nodded, but his eyes wouldn't meet hers. "I know, Mom," he mumbled, fidgeting with his blanket. "Are you sure everything's okay with Uncle Dave? You've seemed a little different after spending time with him lately." For a moment, Julie thought she saw a flicker of something, fear, guilt, in Michael's eyes. But it was gone so quickly she couldn't be sure. "Everything's fine, Mom," he insisted, his voice small. "Can I go to sleep now?" Julie kissed his forehead, her heart heavy. "Of course, sweetie. I love you." As she closed Michael's door, Julie leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart. The interaction had left her more unsettled than ever. Something was wrong. She was sure of it now. But what could she do? That night, after tossing and turning for hours, Julie decided she needed to talk to Mark. She couldn't carry this burden alone anymore. As they lay in bed, the room dark and quiet, Julie turned to her husband. "Mark, are you awake?" A sleepy grunt answered her. What's up, Jules?" Julie took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I need to talk to you about Michael. And Uncle Dave." Mark rolled over, more alert now. "What about them?" Julie poured out everything, her initial concerns about the secret game, the changes she'd noticed in Michael's behavior, her growing fear that something was seriously wrong. As she spoke, her voice trembled with the emotion she'd been holding back for weeks. Mark listened in silence, his brow furrowed. When Julie finally fell quiet, he sighed heavily. "Julie, honey, I think you might be overreacting a bit. You know how kids are with their games and secrets. And Dave?
Come on, he's family."
He loves Michael. But the way Michael clams up when I ask about their time together, Julie insisted. The way he avoids eye contact. "Mark, something's not right. I can feel it." Mark reached out, pulling Julie close. "It's probably nothing, Julie. They're just playing. You know how Dave loves goofing around. Michael's probably just going through a phase, or maybe he's picking up on your anxiety." Julie wanted to believe him. She wanted to think she was just being paranoid, that her fears were unfounded. But the nagging worry in her gut wouldn't be silenced. As she lay in Mark's arms, she couldn't shake the image of Michael's evasive eyes, the sound of his small voice insisting everything was fine when clearly it wasn't. The next day, Julie went through the motions of her normal routine, but her mind was elsewhere. She found herself replaying every interaction with Dave, every time she'd seen him with Michael. Had she missed something? Were there signs she should have seen earlier? As she prepared dinner that evening, Michael's voice broke through her reverie. "Mom, can I go to Uncle Dave's on Saturday?" He said. "He has a surprise for our game." Julie froze, her hand tightening on the spoon she was holding. A surprise? What kind of surprise? Her mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. "We'll see, sweetie," she managed to say, her voice strained. "We might have other plans." Michael's face fell, disappointment clear in his eyes. "But, Mom, it's our special time," Uncle Dave said. "I said we'll see, Michael." Julie snapped, immediately regretting her harsh tone as hurt flashed across her son's face. As Michael slunk out of the kitchen, Julie gripped the counter, her knuckles white. She couldn't go on like this. The constant fear, the suspicion, the way it was affecting her relationship with Michael, something had to give. In that moment, Julie made a decision. She would confront Dave. She had to know the truth, had to put an end to this torturous uncertainty one way or another. The thought terrified her. What if her worst fears were confirmed? But the alternative, continuing in this state of perpetual worry and doubt, was unbearable. As she finished preparing dinner, Julie's mind was made up. This weekend, when Dave came over for their usual family dinner, she would find a moment to speak to him alone. She would demand answers about this secret game, about why Michael had become so withdrawn. The die was cast. For better or worse, Julie was about to uncover the truth behind the mystery that had consumed her family for weeks. Little did she know, the revelation that awaited her would change everything in ways she could never have anticipated. The days leading up to the family dinner crawled by at an agonizing pace for Julie. Her determination to confront Dave warred with her fear of what she might discover. Every interaction with Michael took on new significance, each word and gesture scrutinized for hidden meanings. It was during this time of heightened awareness that Michael let slip a detail that sent Julie's world spinning. They were in the car, driving home from school, when Michael casually mentioned his upcoming visit with Uncle Dave. "I can't wait for Saturday," Michael said, his eyes bright with excitement. Uncle Dave said, "I'm really good at keeping secrets. He says that's why our game is so special." Julie's hands tightened on the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. She fought to keep her voice steady as she asked, "What do you mean, sweetheart? What kind of secrets?" Michael, sensing the tension in his mother's voice, suddenly became guarded. "I can't tell you, Mom. It's part of the game." Julie's mind raced. Secrets. Good at keeping secrets. The words echoed in her head, setting off alarm bells. Everything she'd read about predators grooming children came flooding back. The secretive behavior, the special relationship, the emphasis on keeping things hidden from parents, it all fit a terrifying pattern. "Michael," Julie said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the panic rising in her chest. "You know you can tell me anything, right? Even if someone told you to keep it a secret. Especially then. You won't be in trouble." Michael squirmed in his seat, avoiding eye contact. "I know, Mom, but it's not like that. It's just a game." The rest of the drive home passed in tense silence. Julie's thoughts were a whirlwind of fear and doubt. She tried to give Dave the benefit of the doubt, tried to believe that this was all just an innocent misunderstanding.
But now?
The emphasis on secrecy, Michael's reluctance to share details, it all pointed to something sinister. That evening, after Michael had gone to bed, Julie paced the living room, unable to sit still. When Mark came in, he found her in a state of agitation. "Jules? What's wrong?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Julie took a deep breath, then poured out everything. Michael's comments about being good at keeping secrets, her growing certainty that something was very wrong. To her frustration, Mark still seemed skeptical. "Julie, come on," he said, running a hand through his hair. "This is Dave we're talking about. My brother." He'd never hurt Michael. But the secrets, Mark, Julie insisted, her voice rising. Why would he tell Michael to keep secrets from us? What innocent explanation could there possibly be for that? Mark sighed, pulling Julie into a hug. I don't know, honey, but there has to be a reasonable explanation. Dave's not, he wouldn't. Julie pulled away, frustration and fear making her voice sharp. How can you be so sure? How many times have we heard stories about trusted family members, people no one ever suspected? We can't take chances with Michael's safety. The argument went in circles, neither able to convince the other. Julie, certain that her fears were justified. Mark, unwilling to believe the worst about his brother. They went to bed that night with the issue unresolved, tension thick between them. The next day, Friday, Julie found it almost impossible to concentrate at work. Her mind kept replaying Michael's words, imagining scenarios each more horrifying than the last. By the time she picked Michael up from school, she'd made a decision. She couldn't wait for the family dinner tomorrow. She needed answers now. Michael, she said as they drove home, I think we need to talk about your game with Uncle Dave.
Kenyo.
You tell me more about it? Michael tensed visibly. Mom, I told you. It's a secret. Julie took a deep breath, steadying herself. Sweetheart, I need you to listen to me very carefully. There are some secrets that aren't okay for grown-ups to ask kids to keep, even if it's someone you trust, like Uncle Dave.
Can you understand that?
Michael's lower lip trembled. But Mom, Uncle Dave said. I know, honey, Julie interrupted gently. But I'm your mom, and it's my job to keep you safe. That's why I need to know about this game. Please, Michael, what happens when you play with Uncle Dave? For a moment, Julie thought Michael might open up. She saw conflict in his eyes, saw him wrestling with the desire to please his mother and the compulsion to keep the secret. But then the moment passed, and Michael's expression closed off. It's just a game, Mom, he said flatly. Can we stop talking about it now? Julie's heart sank. She'd pushed too hard, and now Michael was shutting down completely. She realized with a growing sense of dread that she had only one option left. She would have to confront Dave directly. As they pulled into the driveway, Julie made a decision. She couldn't wait until tomorrow's dinner. She needed answers now. While Michael went inside to start his homework, Julie pulled out her phone and dialed Dave's number, her hand shaking slightly. Hey, Julie. Dave's cheerful voice came through the speaker. What's up? Julie took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Dave, we need to talk. About Michael. About this secret game you've been playing. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Julie's heart raced. Then Dave spoke, his voice confused. Secret game? Julie, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, Dave. Julie snapped, her fear and frustration boiling over. Michael's been talking about a secret game he plays with you. He says you told him he's good at keeping secrets. What the hell is going on? The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Julie's mind raced, imagining Dave trying to come up with a lie, trying to cover his tracks. But when he finally spoke, his words were the last thing she expected. Oh my God, Dave said, and Julie was surprised to hear what sounded like genuine shock in his voice. Julie, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Can I come over? I think we need to talk face to face. Julie hesitated, torn between her suspicion and the note of sincerity in Dave's voice. Finally, she made a decision.
Fine. Come over now.
But I swear, Dave, if you've done anything to hurt Michael, I would never. Dave interrupted, his voice firm. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And Julie, I think I know what this is about. Trust me, it's not what you're thinking. As Julie hung up the phone, she felt a mix of emotions swirling within her. Fear, anger, confusion, and a tiny glimmer of hope. Could there really be an innocent explanation for all of this? Or was she about to confront a truth that would tear her family apart? With shaking hands, Julie went inside to wait for Dave's arrival. One way or another, she was about to get the answers she'd been seeking. The truth behind the secret game was finally going to be revealed. The 10 minutes it took for Dave to arrive felt like an eternity to Julie. She paced the living room, her mind racing with possible scenarios, rehearsing what she would say, how she would react if her worst fears were confirmed. She'd sent Michael upstairs to do his homework, not wanting him to overhear the confrontation that was about to take place. When the doorbell finally rang, Julie's heart leapt into her throat. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, she opened the door. Dave stood on the porch, his face a mix of concern and confusion. "Julie," he began, but she cut him off, ushering him inside with a terse gesture. "Living room," she said curtly. "We need to talk." As they sat down, Julie facing Dave across the coffee table, she could feel the tension in the air, thick and oppressive. For a moment, neither spoke, the silence stretching between them like a chasm. Finally, Julie broke the silence, her voice shaking with barely contained emotion. "Dave, I need you to tell me exactly what this secret game is that you've been playing with Michael. And don't try to deny it. He's been talking about it for weeks." Dave leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Julie, I think I know what this is about and I can explain. But first, I need you to know that I would never, ever do anything to hurt Michael. He's my nephew, and I love him like he was my own son." Julie wanted to believe him. The earnestness in his voice, the open concern on his face, it all seemed genuine. But the fear and suspicion that had been building for weeks wouldn't be easily dismissed. "Then explain," she said, her voice hard. "Explain why my son has been keeping secrets, why he's been acting so strangely. Explain why you told him he's good at keeping secrets." Dave took a deep breath, then to Julie's surprise, he chuckled softly. "Oh, Michael," he said, shaking his head. "I think he might have taken our game a bit too seriously." Julie felt a flicker of hope, but she tamped it down, not ready to let her guard down just yet. "What game, Dave? Tell me everything." Dave nodded, his expression becoming serious again. "It's cops and robbers, Julie. That's our secret game. Michael loves pretending to be the robber, and I'm the cop. We run around the backyard, and I pretend to chase him and arrest him." Julie blinked, struggling to process this information. But why the secrecy? Why would he need to keep that a secret? Dave's face softened with understanding. "Because Michael was embarrassed, Julie. He didn't want you and Mark to know he likes playing the bad guy. He thinks it's childish or that you might disapprove. So I played along, told him it could be our secret game." As Dave's words sank in, Julie felt a wave of emotions wash over her: relief, disbelief, and a growing sense of embarrassment. "But he said you told him he was good at keeping secrets," she pressed, still not quite ready to let go of her suspicions. Dave nodded, a rueful smile on his face. "I did say that, but not in the way you're thinking. After one of our games, Michael was worried he might accidentally tell you about being the robber. I told him not to worry, that he was good at keeping secrets. I meant it as a compliment, to make him feel better about our silly game. I never imagined he'd take it so seriously." Julie sat back, her mind reeling. Could it really be this simple? This innocent? Part of her wanted to laugh with relief, while another part felt foolish for having jumped to such terrible conclusions. "Oh God," she murmured, covering her face with her hands. "Dave, I'm so sorry. I imagined." Dave reached out, gently patting her knee. "Hey, no, don't apologize.
You were worried about Michael."
That's what good parents do. They protect their kids, even if it means suspecting the people closest to them." Julie looked up, tears of relief and lingering embarrassment in her eyes. "But I accused you of, I thought you might be." "I know," Dave said softly. "And while it hurts that you could think that of me, I understand. In your shoes, with the little information you had, I might have suspected the same thing." As the full weight of the misunderstanding settled over them, Julie felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her throat. All those sleepless nights, all that fear and worry, all over a game of cops and robbers. "We should probably talk to Michael," Dave suggested gently. "Clear the air, let him know it's okay to talk about our games. Maybe explain that some secrets aren't good to keep, even if they seem harmless." Julie nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yes, you're right. Oh, Dave, I don't know how to thank you for being so understanding. And I don't know how I'll ever explain this to Mark." Dave smiled, standing up and offering Julie his hand. "How about we start by calling Michael down here? I think it's time we all had an open, honest conversation about secrets, games, and the importance of communication. As Julie called for Michael to join them, she felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The nightmare scenario she'd been imagining had turned out to be nothing more than a child's game and a series of misunderstandings. There would be more conversations to come, with Michael, with Mark, with Dave. Lessons to be learned about communication, trust, and the dangers of jumping to conclusions. But for now, Julie allowed herself to bask in the relief that washed over her. The secret game, it turned out, was no dark mystery at all. It was a reminder of the power of open communication, the importance of trust, and the sometimes surprising innocence of a child's world. As Michael's footsteps sounded on the stairs, Julie prepared herself for a conversation that would bring her family closer together, healing the rifts that fear and suspicion had created. The evening after the revelation about the secret game was a whirlwind of emotions for the Harris family. Julie, Mark, and Dave had sat down with Michael, gently explaining the importance of open communication and the difference between good secrets and bad ones. Michael, for his part, had been both confused and a little upset that his secret game had caused so much worry. "But Mom," he'd said, his brow furrowed, "I didn't want you to know I was pretending to be a bad guy. I thought you'd be disappointed in me." Julie had hugged him close, her heart aching at the innocence of his concern. "Oh, sweetheart," she'd murmured, "we could never be disappointed in you for using your imagination. We love you no matter what games you play." As the night wore on and the initial relief faded, Julie found herself grappling with a mix of emotions. Relief, certainly, that her worst fears had been unfounded, but also guilt for having suspected Dave, and a lingering anxiety about how close she'd come to tearing her family apart with her suspicions. Unable to sleep, Julie tossed and turned, her mind racing. Beside her, Mark slept peacefully, the weight of worry lifted from his shoulders. But for Julie, something still felt unresolved. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, an idea began to form in Julie's mind. At first, she dismissed it as ridiculous, but the more she thought about it, the more right it felt. It was a way to turn this whole misunderstanding into something positive, something Michael would never forget. When Mark woke, he found Julie already up, nursing a cup of coffee at the kitchen table, an excited gleam in her eye. "Jules," he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" Julie looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. "I have an idea," she said. "It's a bit crazy, but I think it might be perfect." As Julie outlined her plan, Mark's eyebrows rose higher and higher. When she finished, he let out a low whistle. "That's quite something," he said. "But you know what? I think you're right. It's perfect." With Mark's agreement, Julie took a deep breath and reached for the phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed, not with fear this time, but with nervous excitement. "Hello, police non-emergency line. How can I help you?" A friendly voice answered. Julie took a deep breath. "Hi, my name is Julie Harris. I have a bit of an unusual request. You see, there's been a misunderstanding with my son." Over the next few minutes, Julie poured out the whole story, her fears, the revelation about the cops and robbers game, and finally, her idea. To her surprise and relief, the dispatcher on the other end listened patiently, even chuckling at times. "Mrs. Harris," the dispatcher said when Julie had finished, "I have to say, this is one of the more unique calls I've received. But you know what? I think we can help you out. Let me talk to my supervisor and see what we can arrange." As Julie hung up the phone, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. This wasn't just about making things up to Michael or Dave anymore. It was about turning a moment of fear and mistrust into something magical, something that would remind all of them about the power of family, trust, and a little bit of imagination. With a lighter heart, Julie went to wake Michael, eager to set their surprise in motion. Little did Michael know, his love for playing robbers was about to become the adventure of a lifetime. The next afternoon, the Harris household was abuzz with an air of excitement that Michael couldn't quite understand. His parents kept exchanging secretive smiles, and even Uncle Dave, who had come over for lunch, seemed to be in on whatever was happening. "Mom, Michael asked for what felt like the 100th time. What's going on? Why is everyone acting so weird? Julie just smiled, ruffling his hair. You'll see soon enough, sweetheart. Just be patient. As the clock struck 2, the unmistakable sound of a police siren cut through the quiet afternoon. Michael's eyes widened as he saw a real police car pulling up in front of their house.
Mom?
Dad, he asked, his voice a mix of excitement and nervousness. Why is there a police car outside? Before anyone could answer, there was a knock at the door. Mark opened it to reveal a police officer, her uniform crisp and her smile warm. Good afternoon, she said, her eyes twinkling as they landed on Michael. I heard there was a master robber in this house. Would that be you, young man? Michael's jaw dropped. He looked from the officer to his parents, then to Uncle Dave, confusion written all over his face. Julie knelt beside her son, putting an arm around his shoulders. Michael, remember how we talked about your secret game with Uncle Dave? Well, we thought you might like to meet a real police officer and show her your robber skills. The police officer, whose nameplate read Officer Sarah, stepped forward. That's right, Michael. I heard you're quite the escape artist. Think you can outrun a real cop. For a moment, Michael stood frozen, overwhelmed by the situation. Then, slowly, a grin spread across his face. Really? We can play cops and robbers? For real? Officer Sarah nodded, her smile widening. Absolutely. In fact, I brought something special for you. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small plastic badge. This is an honorary junior police badge. But first, you have to prove you're a worthy opponent in our game. Think you're up for the challenge. Michael's eyes shone with excitement as he nodded vigorously.
Yes.
No. You'll never catch me, officer. And with that, he darted past her, racing into the backyard with a whoop of joy. For the next hour, the Harris's backyard was filled with laughter and playful shouts as Michael led Officer Sarah on a merry chase. Julie, Mark, and Dave watched from the patio, their hearts full at the sight of Michael's unbridled happiness. I can't believe you did this, Dave said softly to Julie. After everything, this is amazing. Julie squeezed his hand. It's the least I could do. I wanted to turn this whole misunderstanding into something positive, something Michael would always remember. As the game wound down, Officer Sarah finally caught Michael, playfully putting plastic handcuffs on him. You're under arrest for being too good at hide and seek, she declared, causing Michael to dissolve into giggles. Bringing him back to the patio, Officer Sarah solemnly presented Michael with the junior police badge. For showing exceptional skill in evasion and for being a worthy opponent, I hereby deputize you as an honorary junior police officer. Michael's chest puffed out with pride as the badge was pinned to his shirt. Does this mean I have to stop being the robber now? He asked, a touch of worry in his voice. Officer Sarah laughed. Not at all. The best cops are the ones who can think like a robber. Just remember, it's only a game. In real life, we always want to follow the law and help people, okay? As Officer Sarah prepared to leave, Julie pulled her aside. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You have no idea how much this means to us. Officer Sarah smiled warmly. It's my pleasure, Mrs. Harris. Your call yesterday, well, let's just say it reminded all of us at the station why we do this job. To protect families like yours and sometimes to help heal them too. After final goodbyes and one last round of photos with Officer Sarah, the Harris family gathered in the living room. Michael couldn't stop talking about his adventure, his eyes shining with excitement. Mom, Dad, did you see? I almost got away from a real police officer. And look at my badge. Can I show it to my friends at school? Can Officer Sarah come back and play again sometime? Julie laughed, pulling Michael into a hug. We'll see, sweetheart. For now, why don't you tell us all about your best moves? I bet Uncle Dave could learn a thing or two from you. As Michael launched into a detailed description of his evasion tactics, Julie caught Mark's eye over their son's head. In that look, they shared their relief, their love, and their renewed appreciation for the innocence of childhood. What had started as a mother's worst fear had transformed into a day of joy, laughter, and family bonding. Julie realized that sometimes The best way to protect our children is not to shield them from the world, but to help them engage with it in safe, positive ways. To nurture their imagination while teaching them about trust, communication, and the importance of family. As the afternoon faded into evening, filled with stories, laughter, and plans for future cops and robbers games, Julie felt a profound sense of gratitude. For her family, for the understanding and support of people like Officer Sarah, and for the reminder that often, the truth is far more beautiful and innocent than our fears would have us believe. The secret game that had caused so much worry had become a catalyst for growth, understanding, and an unforgettable family adventure. And as Julie looked around at the smiling faces of her loved ones, she knew that this day would be remembered not for the misunderstanding that sparked it, but for the love, trust, and joy that it ultimately celebrated.
Disclaimer: this channel does not support or tolerate any form of discrimination, racism, prejudice, or violation of human rights. The stories presented here are original and created by the author with the aim of promoting reflection, awareness, and dialogue. All content is developed with respect for diversity and the dignity of all people.